The school bell rings. The autumn leaves dance through the crisp October air as children poured out of Riverside Elementary School. Among them, 8-year-old twins Mia and Grace Rivers walked hand in hand, their worn backpacks bouncing against their small frames. Unlike the other children who ran excitedly toward waiting parents, the twins moved slowly, knowing no one would be there to greet them. Mia, with her bright amber eyes and determined spirit, squeezed her sister's hand. Grace, gentler and more thoughtful, carried their shared lunchbox that had been empty again that morning. Their mother Rebecca worked 3 jobs just to keep their tiny apartment, leaving the girls to navigate much of their young lives alone. "Look at Jenny's new shoes," Grace whispered, pointing to a classmate who was showing off sparkly sneakers to a group of friends. The twins glanced down at their own shoes, held together with tape and hope. "Mom says new shoes are coming soon," Mia replied, though they both knew soon might never come. Rebecca Rivers had been saying that for months while working as a night cleaner, morning cafe server, and weekend babysitter for other families. A chance meeting as the twins walked past the school parking lot. They noticed a sleek black car parked awkwardly across 2 spaces. A tall man in an expensive suit stood beside it, talking animatedly on his phone. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and even from a distance, the girls could see the frustration on his handsome face. Damian Blake, founder and CEO of Blake Industries, was having the worst day of his 32 years. His driver had called in sick, his GPS had led him to the wrong address, and now his phone was dying just as he was supposed to be in the most important meeting of his career. The partnership deal with a major tech company hung in the balance, and he was stranded outside an elementary school with no idea where he was supposed to be. "Excuse me, sir," came a small voice beside him. Damian looked down to see 2 identical girls with matching amber eyes and concerned expressions. Their school uniforms were clean, but clearly old, and something about their earnest faces made him pause his frantic phone conversation. "Are you lost?" asked Mia, the bolder of the 2 sisters. Damian blinked in surprise. In his world of corporate executives and business meetings, no one had asked him such a simple, caring question in years. "I am, actually," he admitted, ending his call. "I'm looking for the Grandview Business Center. It's across town," Grace said softly, "about 20 minutes by car." "You girls know the city well," Damian observed, impressed by their knowledge. "We walk everywhere with Mom," Mia explained. She doesn't have a car. Something in the way she said it, without self-pity, but with simple acceptance, touched something deep in Damian's chest. He studied the girls more carefully, noticing details that spoke of a hard life lived with dignity. Their clothes were patched but clean, their hair neatly braided, their manners impeccable, despite their obvious poverty. "An innocent request, my phone died," Damian said, showing them the black screen. "I don't suppose either of you knows how to get there without GPS?" The twins exchanged one of their silent communications, a look that passed between them like telepathy. Then Mia stepped forward with the fearless confidence that had gotten her both into and out of trouble since she could. "Walk. We could show you the way," she offered. "First, could you do us a favor?" Damian raised an eyebrow, amused by the 8-year-old's negotiation tactics. "What kind of favor?" "Tomorrow is our school's family day," Grace explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone's parents are supposed to come watch us perform. But our mom has to work," Mia continued, her chin raised defiantly against the embarrassment. "She has 3 jobs and can't take time off. We'll be the only kids there without anyone," Grace added, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Damian felt his heart clench. He thought of his own childhood, growing up in foster care after his parents died in a car accident when he was 7. He remembered the school events where he sat alone, watching other children beam as their families cheered. "For them? What exactly are you asking me?" he said gently. Mia took a deep breath, gathering all her courage. "Would you pretend to be our dad? Just for one day? Just so we're not alone up there?" The request was so unexpected, so innocent and heartbreaking that Damian was speechless for several seconds. These 2 little girls who had never seen him before in their lives were asking him to fill the most important role in their world. Even if it was just pretend, the business deal that could wait. "I have to get to this meeting," Damian said slowly. Though for the first time in his career, A business deal didn't seem like the most important thing in the world. "We understand," Grace said quickly, mistaking his hesitation for rejection. "It was a silly idea." "No," Damien said firmly, surprising himself. "It's not silly at all. It's just that I don't know anything about being a father. You just have to sit there and clap," Mia explained earnestly, "and maybe take pictures like the other parents do." Damien looked at his expensive watch, then at the two hopeful faces staring up at him. His meeting was worth millions of dollars. This favor would cost him nothing but time, yet somehow he knew which choice would matter more in the long run. "Okay," he said, and watched as both girls' faces lit up like Christmas morning. "I'll be there, really." Mia breathed as if she couldn't believe it. "Really?" Damien confirmed. "Now about those directions to the business center. Mother's worry that—" Evening, Rebecca Rivers arrived home at nearly midnight, exhausted from her shift at the all-night diner. She found the twins asleep in their shared bed. But Mia had left a note on her pillow in careful 8-year-old handwriting. "Mom, I found someone to come to family day. Don't worry, love. Mia and Grace." Rebecca's heart filled with a mixture of gratitude and concern. Her daughters were resourceful, but they were also trusting in a way that sometimes worried her. Who had they asked? How had they convinced someone to give up their time for two little girls they didn't know? She knelt beside their bed, brushing Grace's soft hair from her forehead and adjusting Mia's blanket. These two precious souls were her entire world, and she would work herself to death before she let them want for anything. But she couldn't give them everything, and tomorrow would be another reminder of that fact. "Please let whoever they found be kind," she whispered into the darkness. The morning of family day, Damien stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the third time. He had attended board meetings with Fortune 500 CEOs, given presentations, 2 rooms full of investors, and negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But somehow, the thought of sitting in an elementary school auditorium watching 2 8-year-olds perform had him more nervous than any of those high-stakes situations. He had called his assistant the night before to reschedule his morning meetings, telling her only that he had a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie. In the span of one conversation, these 2 little girls had somehow become important to him in a way he couldn't explain. At Riverside Elementary, Mia and Grace Rivers were getting ready for their performance with unusual excitement. Their classmates chattered about their parents' plans to film them, take pictures, and celebrate afterward. For the first time, the twins would have someone in the audience just for them. "Do you think he'll really come?" Grace asked as they practiced their dance. "Routine one final time," he promised, Mia said with absolute certainty. And he seemed like the kind of person who keeps promises. Neither girl could have imagined that across town. Their mysterious benefactor was having the same nervous excitement, changing clothes twice and stopping to buy flowers because he thought that's what parents did on family day. The performance at the Riverside Elementary auditorium was packed with proud families when Damien Blake walked through the doors at exactly 9:30 a.m. He had never felt more out of place in his expensive suit among the casual-dressed parents. But when Mia and Grace spotted him from backstage, their radiant smiles made every awkward moment worth it. He found a seat in the 3rd row and watched as class after class took the stage. When the 2nd grade class was announced, his heart began to race with an anticipation he didn't fully understand. Then Mia and Grace appeared, wearing matching white dresses that were clearly their best clothes. Though they showed signs of careful mending, the twins performed a dance to a song about families. Their movements perfectly synchronized, their voices sweet and clear. But what struck Damien most was how their eyes kept finding his in the audience. How their smiles grew brighter each time they saw him watching. When they finished, the applause was thunderous, but none louder than Damien's. He was on his feet, clapping and cheering, as if he had been their father for 8 years instead of 8 hours. The twins beamed and waved, and for a moment, the pretense felt completely real. After the performance, children ran to their families for hugs and congratulations. Mia and Grace approached Damien more shyly, suddenly uncertain now that their moment on stage was over. "You were incredible," Damien said, kneeling down to their level. "I've never seen anything more beautiful." Thank you for coming, Grace said. Softly, no one has ever watched us perform before. Thank you for letting me, Damien replied, and meant it more than any words he had ever spoken. As other families began to leave, taking their children out for celebratory lunches and ice cream, Damien realized he didn't want this to end. Would you girls like to get some lunch? We could celebrate your amazing performance. The twins looked at each other with that silent communication again, then back at him with shining eyes. We'd love that, Mia said. But we should call Mom first. She doesn't know about you yet. And in that moment, Damien Blake realized that this chance encounter with two little girls had changed something fundamental inside him. For the first time in his adult life, he had experienced the pure joy of putting someone else's happiness before his own success. And he wasn't ready to let that feeling go. The phone call that changed everything. Rebecca Rivers was restocking coffee supplies. At the cafe, when her phone buzzed, the caller ID showed an unknown number, which usually meant either a bill collector or a wrong number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. Hello, is this Rebecca Rivers? The voice was deep, cultured, and completely unfamiliar. Yes, who is this? Rebecca asked, stepping into the supply room for privacy. My name is Damien Blake. I'm calling about your daughters, Mia and Grace. They're fine, he added quickly, hearing her sharp intake of breath. Actually, they're wonderful. I just spent the morning with them at their school's family day. Rebecca's mind raced. This was the mysterious person the twins had somehow convinced to attend their performance. I don't understand. They found me yesterday when I was lost near their school. They offered to help me find my way, but first, they asked me for a favor. Damien paused, choosing his words carefully. They asked me to attend their performance today because they didn't want to be the only children there without family. Rebecca felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and her eyes fill with tears. Her babies had been so desperate for someone to watch them perform that they had asked a complete stranger. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I had to work. I couldn't afford to lose a day's pay. Please don't apologize, Damien said gently. What they did was brave and beautiful. And I want you to know that watching them perform was the highlight of my year. Something in his voice made Rebecca pause. This wasn't the irritated tone of someone who had been inconvenienced by two persistent children. This was something else. Entirely. They're having lunch with me right now, Damien continued. With your permission, I'd like to bring them home afterward and maybe meet you properly. Rebecca glanced at the clock. Her shift ended in 2 hours, and she had another job that evening. But something about this man's voice told her he was safe, and more importantly, that he genuinely cared about her daughters. Okay, she said, but I need to ask you something first. Why would you do this for two children you don't even know? There was a long pause before Damien answered. Because I know what it feels like to be alone in a room full of families, and because your daughters are extraordinary. The meeting when Damien's black sedan pulled up outside the modest apartment building on Maple Street, Rebecca was waiting. On the front steps, she had rushed home from work, changed out of her cafe uniform, and spent 10 minutes trying to tame her unruly dark hair. She was nervous in a way she hadn't been since her first job interview. The man who stepped out of the car took her breath away. Tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and an easy smile, he looked like he had stepped off the cover of a business magazine, which Rebecca realized with growing amazement he probably had. But it was the way Mia and Grace bounded out of the car and ran to her, chattering excitedly about their lunch and their new friend, that told her everything she needed to know about this mysterious Damien Blake. Mommy took us to Romano's, Mia announced, referring to the upscale Italian restaurant downtown that Rebecca had only ever walked past, and he said we could order anything we wanted. I had chicken parmesan, Grace added, still clutching. A takeout container. It's Coda, and I saved you some because I know it's your favorite. Rebecca looked up to find Damien watching the interaction with a soft expression. When their eyes met, she felt an unexpected jolt of recognition, as if she had been waiting to meet this man without knowing it. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. Thank you for raising such incredible children, Damien replied. May I walk you up? I'd like to talk, if you have time. The conversation. Rebecca's apartment was small, but immaculately clean. Filled with secondhand furniture arranged with care and love, children's artwork covered the refrigerator, library books were stacked neatly on every surface, and the scent of cinnamon candles couldn't quite mask the smell of the cheap soap she used to keep everything spotless. Damien looked around with genuine interest rather than judgment, noting the way Rebecca had created a warm, loving home despite obvious financial constraints. A framed photo on the mantel showed a younger Rebecca with 2 babies, all 3 of them smiling despite the cramped hospital room visible in the background. "You did this all alone," he observed. "Their father left when I told him I was pregnant," Rebecca said matter-of-factly, settling the twins at the kitchen table with coloring books. "His loss?" "Definitely his loss," Damien agreed, and something in his tone made Rebecca look at him more closely. Over the next hour, while Mia and Grace colored and shared stories about their day, Rebecca and Damien talked. She learned that he had built his technology company from nothing after aging out of foster care. He learned that she had been working multiple jobs while putting herself through nursing school, still 2 years away from graduation. "Why nursing?" Damien asked. "Because I want to help people," Rebecca replied. "Because nurses make good money, enough to give my girls the life they deserve." The simple honesty of her answer moved him. Here was a woman who worked herself to exhaustion not for luxury or status, but simply to provide for her children. Everything about her spoke of strength, dignity, love. "An unexpected offer. I have a proposition," Damien said as the afternoon grew late, "and I want you to think about it before you answer." Rebecca tensed, suddenly wary. In her experience, men who made propositions usually wanted something she wasn't willing to give. "I need someone to help manage my home," Damien continued, seemingly unaware of her discomfort. "Someone to coordinate with housekeeping, handle personal appointments, maybe help with correspondence. It would be flexible hours, mostly from home. And it would pay well enough that you wouldn't need your other jobs." Rebecca stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to have more time with your daughters while still supporting them," Damien corrected. "The girls could come to my office after school if needed. There's a whole floor that's basically unused." "Why?" Rebecca asked bluntly. "You don't know me. You don't know if I'm qualified for that kind of work?" Damien was quiet for a moment, watching Mia help Grace with a particularly challenging section of her coloring book. "Because in one morning your daughters taught me more about family than I've learned in 32 years of living. And because I think we could help each other." The decision that night, after Damien had left and the twins were asleep, Rebecca sat at her kitchen table staring at the business card he had given her. Damien Blake, CEO, Blake Industries. She had looked him up online and nearly choked on her coffee. When she saw his net worth, this man was offering her a way out of the endless cycle of work and worry that defined her life since the twins were born. But more than that, he was offering her daughters something she had never been able to give them: stability. She thought about Mia's worn shoes and Grace's quiet acceptance when there wasn't enough food for lunch. She thought about the nights she fell asleep at her textbooks, too exhausted to study, but knowing she had to keep trying for their sake. And she thought about the way Damien had looked at her daughters, not with pity or charity, but with genuine affection and respect. Her phone buzzed with a text message. No pressure on the job offer. "But I'd like to take you all to dinner tomorrow if you're free." The girls mentioned they've never been to a baseball game. Rebecca smiled despite herself. She was beginning to understand that Damien Blake was a man who noticed details, who listened to what children said and remembered what mattered to them. She typed back, "We'd like that." And about the job offer. Yes. The new beginning 3 weeks later, Rebecca Rivers sat in a spacious office overlooking the city, coordinating Damien's schedule while Mia and Grace did homework at a child-sized table he had installed just for them. The work was challenging, but interesting, and for the first time in years, she wasn't exhausted by 5 o'clock. More importantly, she was getting to know the man who had stepped into their lives like an answer to prayers she had been afraid to pray. Damien was kind without being condescending, generous without making her feel like charity, and patient in a way that suggested he understood what it meant to struggle. She was also falling in love with him, though she tried to ignore that particular complication. "Mom," Grace said, looking up from her math homework, "is Damien going to be our dad now?" The question caught Rebecca off guard. What makes you ask that, sweetheart? He comes to dinner every night, Mia pointed out practically. And he helped me with my science project. And he looks at you the way dads look at moms in movies. Rebecca felt her cheeks warm. It's complicated, girls. Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to admit they like someone, Grace observed. With 8-year-old wisdom, before Rebecca could respond, Damien's voice came from the doorway. Am I interrupting something important? We were just telling Mom that you like her, Mia announced with characteristic directness. Damien's eyebrows rose, and he looked at Rebecca with an expression that made her heart skip. Were you now? That she likes you too, Grace added helpfully, even though she thinks it's complicated. Well, Damien said, walking into the office and sitting on the edge of Rebecca's desk. Maybe it doesn't have to be complicated. Rebecca looked up at him. This impossibly handsome, successful man who had somehow chosen to care about her small, ordinary family. Damien. I know what you're thinking, he said gently, that we're from different worlds, that this happened too fast, that I might get bored or change my mind. He was right. Those were exactly her fears. But here's what I know, Damien continued, his voice soft but certain. I know that I've never felt more at home anywhere than I do with you and the girls. I know that I want to be here for every homework session and bedtime story and scraped knee, and I know that I'm falling in love with all three of you. The words hung in the air between them while Mia and Grace watched with rapt attention, as if they were witnessing the most important moment of their young lives. The confession. Rebecca felt her heart stop and restart in the space between Damien's words and her response. She had imagined this moment in her dreams but never believed it could happen in real life. Men like Damien Blake didn't fall in love with single mothers who worked 3 jobs and lived in tiny apartments. Yet here he was, looking at her with eyes full of hope and vulnerability, waiting for her answer while her daughters watched like they were attending the most important performance of their lives. You don't know what you're saying? Rebecca whispered, standing up from her desk chair. I have baggage, Damien. I have responsibilities. I have 2 children who need stability, not someone who might decide this was all a mistake in 6 months. Look at me, Damien said, rising to face her. Really look at me, Rebecca? She did, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. This wasn't the expression of a man caught up in a moment of sentiment. This was the look of someone who had made a decision with his whole heart. I grew up in 7 different foster homes, Damien said quietly. I know what it feels like, too. Be abandoned. I would never do that to you or to them. This isn't a game or an experiment. This is me asking you to build a life together. Mia and Grace exchanged one of their telepathic looks. Then Mia spoke up with characteristic boldness. Mom, if you don't say yes, we're going to be very disappointed in your decision-making skills. Despite everything, Rebecca laughed. Is that so? He makes you smile, Grace observed. And he remembers that I like my sandwiches cut in triangles and that Mia doesn't like pickles. And he bought us new backpacks without us even asking, Mia added. And he reads us bedtime stories with different voices for all the characters. Rebecca looked at her daughters, these wise little souls who had somehow orchestrated the best thing that had ever happened to their family. Then she looked back at Damien, who was watching her with patient hope. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, Damien replied. But I'm more scared of losing you. Rebecca took a deep breath, feeling as if she stood on the edge of a cliff with the choice to either step back to safety or leap into something beautiful and terrifying. I love you too, she said finally. All of us do. The first kiss later that evening, after Mia and Grace had been tucked into their beds in Damien's guest room, which had been transformed into a princess paradise, complete with twin beds and more toys than they had ever dreamed of owning. Rebecca and Damien sat on his penthouse balcony, overlooking the city lights. I never thought this would be my life, Rebecca said, curled up beside him on the outdoor sofa. A month ago, I was worried about paying rent. Now, I'm sitting in a penthouse, falling in love with a billionaire. A month ago, I thought success meant profit margins and stock prices, Damien replied, stroking her hair. Now I know it means coming home to you and the girls. Rebecca turned to look at him, this man who had changed everything about their world. The girls asked me something today, before you came in. What did they ask? If you were going to be their dad now? Damien was quiet for a moment, his hands stilling in her hair. What did you tell them? That it was complicated. But maybe... Rebecca hesitated, then forged ahead. Maybe it doesn't have to be. Damien shifted to face her fully, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. Rebecca Rivers, are you asking me to marry you? Maybe I am, she said, surprising herself. With her boldness, is that terrible? It's too fast, too presumptuous. Instead of answering, Damien leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of promise, tasting like the future they could build together. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Yes, he whispered against her lips. To all of it, yes. The perfect proposal 2 months later on a crisp December morning. Damien took Rebecca and the twins to the place where it all began, Riverside Elementary School. It's the same parking lot where 2 little girls had asked a stranger to be their pretend father for a day. Why are we here? Grace asked, bundled up in her new winter coat. Because this is where our family started, Damien explained. Pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth as Damien dropped to one knee right there in the school parking lot, in front of God and the morning carpool line and anyone else who cared to watch. Rebecca Rivers, he said, his voice carrying across the crisp morning air. You and these 2 incredible girls have taught me what love really means. You've shown me that family isn't about blood or biology. It's about choice and commitment and showing up every day. Mia and Grace stood on either side of their mother, practically vibrating with excitement as other parents began to notice what was happening and stop to watch. I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life, Damien continued. I want to be Mia and Grace's father in every way that matters. I want to wake up every morning knowing that I get to love you, protect you, and build dreams with you. He opened the box to reveal a ring that caught the morning sunlight and scattered it like stars. Will you marry me? Rebecca was crying now, happy tears that sparkled on her cheeks like diamonds. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. As Damien slipped the ring onto her finger, the growing crowd of onlookers erupted in applause. Mia and Grace threw themselves into the group hug, and for a moment, the 4 of them stood there in the parking lot where their story began, holding each other tight against the beautiful uncertainty of the future, the happily ever after 6 months. Later, Rebecca Blake stood in the bridal suite of the Four Seasons Hotel, wearing a dress that cost more than she used to make in 3 months. Surrounded by friends who had become family and family who had become everything, Mia and Grace, resplendent in matching flower girl dresses, put the finishing touches on her veil while chattering excitedly about their roles in the ceremony. Are you nervous, Mom? Grace asked, always attuned to the emotions of others. The good kind of nervous, Rebecca replied, looking at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was transformed, not just by the expensive dress and professional makeup, but by love and happiness, and the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. Damien's probably more nervous than you are, Mia observed. He changed his tie 3 times this morning. Rebecca laughed, picturing her soon-to-be husband fussing over details the way he did when something really mattered to him. Everything about this day mattered to him, from the flowers that matched the twins' favorite colors to the photographer who specialized in capturing the kind of joy that couldn't be posed. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called. Damien's assistant entered with a small wrapped box. Mr. Blake asked me to give this to you before the ceremony, she said with a smile. Inside the box was a delicate necklace with 3 small diamonds and a note in Damien's careful handwriting. One for each of the hearts you've given me a home in. I love you, D. Rebecca touched the necklace, thinking about the journey that had brought them here.